And the last question I have for you is it worth applying self-imposed challenges without knowing its viability?
Uh, I think so. Even if it becomes non-viable, like you realize, okay, it's not viable for certain part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, if you're trying to let's take your no gun in Resident Evil 4
Mm-hmm.
and then like once you reach like a certain point you're like, oh okay, now I actually have to use the gun, but you can like, okay, I can just like put a bumper here, like this section I'll use what I have, but then right after I go back to using a knife, you can. I mean, it depends on how you yourself want to play, I guess.
Yes. Um, Usually my cutoff is when RNG becomes too big of a factor. It can be possible, but only through RNG. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
like in
hmm?
random encounters and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with Dark Souls, for example. I like to not roll sometimes with boss fights. However, if it just seems a little bit too thick in RNG, like in terms of I have to walk away way too much in order to get a hit in. Now, of course, there might be some spacing you can do in terms of hugging the boss, but
Yeah,
if like a boss only has one attack that you can really just run away from and come back later, that's kind of where I draw the line. I'm like, man, this boss fight is lasting way too long to do a no roll, and so I commit to eventually just dodging. And so with Resident Evil 4 currently, where I'm just doing no item runs, I mean, it's fun, but it's probably gonna get to a point where it's not going to be fun, and that's where I draw the line. Because
yeah,
I get down to the point to where it's either just RNG or it's just
not fun.
bloated, bloated or RNG, or sometimes it's even both, or sometimes it's bloated because of the RNG.
Or
And
sometimes the RNG becomes more prevalent because it is loaded.
yeah, exactly. Like it's just with not using any. For right now, I can get by. I can solve a puzzle, open up the door, and there's also animation invincibility frames in Resident Evil 4 that I've noticed, like moving that card out of the way. You have a little bit of vulnerability while initiating the animation, but once it gets
Yeah.
started, you are invincible. So that can be used to my advantage, like I did with the third encounter of Chapter One, because
Hmm.
I have pretty much three enemies, including the Brood, on top of me, but I'm in that iframe, you know,
Yeah.
animation. But they could have easily just attacked me once it was over with. However, I did get lucky, but I decided to keep the footage because I was like, okay, it's done. It's not like it was an incredibly challenging, um, you know, set of restrictions, but it was just very interesting on how it was done. I don't know if other players have discovered these particular maneuvers. Maybe they have, but I just the whole purpose of just doing these challenges and uploading it on YouTube is just to help others out and also discuss it and
Yeah.
just seeing how others also do it. Maybe I'm pretty, I guarantee you, there's probably gonna be somebody out there that's gonna do it way faster than me. That's just how it works. There's always gonna be somebody better, and I'm
The
definitely not gonna be.
speedrunners.
I'm definitely not in the top 50. I'm not in the top 100. I'm just someone that likes a challenge, and I just upload it because it's just I want to add something to the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, that's all my questions. I kind of wanted to start wrapping things up around 1 hour and 40 minutes. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up for me, or something you wanted to add on?
Um, like the one thing I'm like just that's good. Like since we've talked so much about it already before, like you need to get through the game. It's just so good.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't be surprised if like next week I'm still in chapter two because of how stubborn I am. You'll probably ask me, "Oh man, are you on chapter 10 yet?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I'm still in chapter two, trying to figure out the maneuvering around the enemy." Because that's just how I love to play video games these days. I just love this. If I can get a sense of something is possible, I'll spend an incredible amount of time on it. Because there's a particular part of gaming where it's your fault, and so you want to improve on your skill of that level design or enemy
Yeah.
encounter. But when something starts feeling, like I mentioned several times, RNG, that's when I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to do this anymore. But I might just continue on with that standard on the next encounter. However, if
Yeah.
it starts being consistently unreliable in terms of my self-imposed challenges, then I might go like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna start using my knife instead. And if that stops working, I might have to start using my gun, but it might be to a very small level, like just getting a headshot to kill one particular enemy that's causing a compromise in my strategy. I'm like, okay, I got to get rid of this guy because he's ruining everything. He's throwing a, a piece of dynamite that's blowing up and causing my enemy to take damage. And so I had to get rid of him as fast as possible because everything else is going to fall apart.
Yeah, yeah.
So stuff like that. There's always stuff like that. You can run into, like with the Elden Beast from Elden Ring. Have you finished Elden Ring yet?
I finally finish Elden Ring, and not a big fan of the Elden Beast.
I like him except for the Elden Stars attack. I think
Yeah, that
a lot of people say they don't like the fact that the Elden Beast runs away, but I think for some reason I don't mind it. I don't like bosses running away from me, but I don't know why it works for me in the Elden Beast. There's
I
something, huh?
I I think it might just because of like the spectacle of it, because like it's like from a like a visual perspective, it's just simply stunning to like just watch the Elden Beast and
Well,
how it moves around with grace and stuff.
yeah, and also it does reward you because the Elder Beast can just kind of sit there for a while, and you can kind of just wail on him. So whenever he
Yeah,
runs away, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna take a small break. And but the Elden Stars, it's just I hate it so much. It is I think it goes against a lot of design philosophies in the From Software series because
definitely.
you have to. There are two ways. There's one official way and one unofficial way. I don't know what the strategy guide is going to say, but I can almost 90% guarantee you that it's going to tell you to take the flask of wondrous physique to tank it, the holy
Yeah,
resistance, because there's
yeah.
really no other way. Um,
And tanking attacks just like it's not from software. It's
yeah, yeah.
usually dodge.
When I take damage, I look at it as a failure, and that's
Exactly.
one reason why I haven't uploaded my fight with Moog yet because you have to take damage to get his fight over with.
Exactly. But in Moog's sense, it how the I mean how his phase worked. Like he took damage for you and from you, and it was interesting.
Yeah, I don't
How
know.
how how he took your life to extend his and then go goblin mode.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it from a presentation perspective. Same thing with Radon. Radon has an incredible presentation, but his fight is terrible in my opinion. I can't stand
Really?
fighting him. Yeah, because I don't
No.
like running up to him, avoiding his arrows. Even though it's not that complicated. It just takes so long.
Yeah. But for me, like the spectacle of his fight is just a super like I can just end up like just sitting there and like just watching the whole
Hmm.
the whole fight.
Yeah, he's a fight that's a lot more entertaining to watch than actually. I mean, in my opinion, at least, he's a lot more fun to watch someone else fight him than myself fight him because
Yeah.
I just don't find his attacks interesting. I think yeah, they had a huge. He has a lot of potential. I mean, in terms of just having very unique attacks, but he's just constantly moving around. You can't really do a whole lot with him. And usually, most of his attacks for the half of the fight is generally the same, just him waving his weapons around. And I understand he's crazy, he's out of his mind, so it makes sense. I
Yeah.
just wish it was just more iconic in terms of something like Manus, where he raises up his arm, slams it down. I just, I was kind of hoping for a more, you know, advanced version of Manus, I suppose. I'm not trying to. I'm not wanting the same fight. I just want something in terms of quality of attacks.
Yeah.
Like with Manus, every single attack
Was
I
dodgeable.
well, it's just pretty much every single one of his attacks is approachable in terms of attacking, following up and punishing. But with Radon, the way he just kind of spams and then he uses a gravity AOE attack, you can't really follow up respectfully
No.
in terms of combat philosophy, and that's why I just don't really care for him that much. Now his meteor attack is really cool. I wouldn't want something like that to be removed. That's the kind of attacks that I love to see. But in terms of just bosses just going into a frenzy of waving their weapons around just doesn't interest me in a combat philosophy
Yeah,
perspective.
when that happens, it moves away from becoming a duel to just one guy is just how long you can survive the onslaught of attacks.
Yeah, and same thing goes with a similar situation goes with Melania. I think
Oh, Melania.
she has a lot of potential of being a really awesome fight, but the entire time you're fighting her, you're having to worry about the waterfowl dance, which isn't a really bad attack itself. It's just worrying about it happening is the problem. Because if I'm positioned correctly, her it's an incredibly fun attack to dodge through. However, if you're caught underneath her, you either have to perfectly frame perfect dodge through something, or like position the camera in a wonky way to avoid it. But if you don't want to have to worry about something frame perfect, then it's just going to be you're constantly stressing over something, and you have to stay a certain distance away from her the entire fight. I
Yeah.
um I got a no damage defeat of her first phase, and I just didn't really want to do the rest of it. Even though her second phase looks a lot better and a lot more interesting, I'm just kind of, by that time I get done with her first phase, I'm just kind of done.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the Melania fight at all. I think it's one of the worst fights in the whole game.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's not 100% there yet. It needs some tiny little tweaks. Like the waterfowl dance needs some kind of proper telegraph instead of just her suddenly doing it. Her jumping up in
Yeah,
the
like
air
suddenly going up in the air. Yeah.
and then it's
It
too
doesn't give you
late.
time to react.
It's either too late or you have an opportunity to dodge. And I just don't think that's the proper way to design a boss fight. And she needs like a little, at least maybe a sound cue, or maybe some leaves ruffle up somewhere to where I'm like, oh, she's about to do the waterfowl dance, and so you can properly position yourself. I think she would be talked about a lot more if she just was designed a little bit better, and it's just a shame because her fight, the first phase that I got for her was like 3 minutes long. Her first phase alone. So, her fight's just not that incredibly interesting in general. But if
No.
she could just, and mainly it's because of worrying about the waterfowl dance. If it wasn't for the waterfowl dance, I think she would be a well paced out boss.
Maybe for the DLC they might give us like a Melania Part 2 fight,
uh,
considering like that it might we might be hearing a lot more about Mikola in the DLC.
yeah, that's definitely a big theory. I mean, apparently, have they confirmed that's her in the thumbnail that they released?
No, they haven't yet, but I think it's more likely probably Mikola.
I think they need to fix the Godskin duo first before Melania.
Oh, definitely.
That is the biggest speed bump in the main path of the game whenever I get to them, because I don't like using those sleeping pots, or of course I don't summon, and the fight
Yeah.
should work without all that stuff. That's how all the FromSoft games have worked. Everything's been viable in terms of
Solo.
restrictions. Yeah, solo. But with the Godskin Duo, they basically just spit in your face because nothing wants to work properly. Because you have to worry about fireballs hitting you off screen. You have to worry about the noble's roll going over the broken pillars, which shouldn't
Yeah.
happen in terms
No.
of game design. It's like you have something that works. Why in the world is there a chance that he rolls over the pillar? Which is strange because other people that I've talked to in terms of restrictions that have fought the Godskin Duo say that the noble doesn't roll over the pillars. I'm like, yes, he does. I've seen it several times. They're like,
Seen with
oh,
my own eyes.
it's like you got to do it in the middle pillars. I'm like, he's rolled over the middle pillars, so I don't have no idea what. Sorry, I get very upset about the Godskin Duo because it's just such a absurd design in terms of flaws.
Exactly. Like on their own, both of them are like super fun bosses. I love fighting them both on their own.
Oh yeah,
Together, it doesn't work.
I love the noble because I love parrying him. He's one of the very few bosses where the thrust attack works for me, because usually thrust attacks are my weakness. Is my weakness in general, but the noble is probably the best, has the best thrust attacks I've ever seen out of enemy or bosses in general, because it's well telegraphed. You know when it's coming. You can properly time it. I can fight the noble all day long. I just love the fight. It's spectacular. Now the apostle, he's still a little bit weird for me, but I love his second phase because his attacks get really strange, but they're well
Yeah.
telegraphed.
And for me, like the best thrust attacks I've seen in a video game are probably from Sekiro.
Yeah, Sekiro was pretty good for what it is. Very out of all the From Software games, Sekiro is probably the closest to being perfect, just because it kind of does
Yeah.
its own thing. and it does its own thing extremely well. It's similar to Mafia in The Last of Us. Um,
Uh,
but it's almost 2 hours here. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up here in a few minutes. I just want to remind the listeners to definitely watch your videos, especially the one of my favorite videos of yours, the one about short games. That video definitely spoke to me because I'm the total opposite. Because
oh yeah.
I love to play games slowly compared to other people that like to play the games really quickly. And you compared it to fast cars, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember now what I spoke about the video.
Thank you for listening to this podcast clip. If you want to watch more of the podcast, the full podcast is in the link in the description, along with my guest's channel name. And if you would like to guest in a future podcast, please contact me and we shall talk so we can discuss many, many topics, more to come. Other than that, have a glorious day.